So here we are. We've called to order, that's called roll. I think I should call the roll for legislative committee. So, Dave is here.
Here.
I'm here. And Luke Murphy is not, is he expected or, again, not to be?
Not today.
Not to be expected. So, just a couple of us, and I approve the minutes.
Yeah, I have no questions about the minutes, John.
And public comment? Okay, I hear nothing. And we have two topics that are on the agenda. Before we get started, is there something else? David, do you want to put something else on the agenda?
Not today, no.
Okay, so let's just run through this. The historic property exemption, RPTL section 444 dash. I have it. David, do you have any comments or thoughts, questions?
I guess the question is, did we hear back, is Hank coming to finance?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
What was that?
So Hank was apparently going to come to finance to do a tax thing, but,
Yeah, I wasn't sure why this was on our agenda.
well, it would have to be enacted as a local law.
Okay.
We've been kinda waiting on Hank we like 2 ships in a night passed. Like, he was gonna do it one night and then he missed it, and
Well, we canceled it, I think.
yeah, we canceled it one time, unbeknownst to him. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just get with Hank, like during a work day, and kind of sit down with him and get all the details of this so that we can, like, I can ask him questions and we can kind of hammer it out. And then that way we're not trying to like pin him down in a meeting.
Tell me again, what's Hank's last name again?
Shepherd? Shepherd. S-C-H-E-C-H-E-R.
Do you have any idea what his concerns might be?
I don't know if it's a concern. I mean, I think the idea was just to get him to like kind of do a little presentation about what all the ins and outs of this particular ordinance or law would be. It's not an ordinance, it's a law. So, I guess I was just thinking I could meet with him and I could just get the lowdown that he would kind of present to the group so that we could, you know, get some questions answered or have, instead of trying to pin him down to one of our meetings.
Okay.
I think if you remember, I think previously we shared a little summary of what this
Yeah.
entails.
Yeah.
I know everyone's just,
I mean, it's not overly, like complex, so I don't see it being a really big deal, but I can sit down and specifically talk to him about it.
from what I was reading, I believe the city, the county and the school district, if they wanted to apply this as well, they'd have to pass it themselves. Otherwise, obviously, it would just apply to the city's property taxes. The council has the option to change the percentages of the exemption over the 9 years. The standard is years 1 through 5, 100%, and decreasing by 20% each year thereafter. 0.
So it's kind of like a little mini pilot program.
Yeah, I think the other thing that the city could customize is what forms of alteration specifically are eligible. I don't know examples of that, that's just what I read, but if you have an example, Steve.
So typically it applies to exterior, it would be exterior improvements. If you wanted to mirror kind of like what the national, like the state and federal tax credits look like, typically it's like a certain percentage of the money is required to be exterior in the form of permanent improvements. The federal and state ones do allow for like some landscaping stuff as well. So we could kind of like tweak that a little bit. The other thing that we could kind of tweak is sometimes it's applicable to improvements done just from the right of way, or observable from the right of way, so we could tweak that to be
Everywhere.
any improvement.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to see it for any improvement, not just from what you can see from the right of way.
But yeah, so that's kind of, but again, it's not overly complex. I mean,
Okay.
I think another thing we might wanna ask Hank about is there like a clause improves a house, and it might even be in there, I can't remember off the top of my head. If someone receives a tax credit, sorry, I keep calling them tax credits, used to tax credits. If they receive some sort of tax abatement, and then they sell the house in 2 years, is there any sort of clawback for the 2 years of, you know, is there like a prorated, like, so you, essentially, so you can't just buy and flip houses and then write the tax off, like, how does that, is there a transfer, is there a, you know, is this like a transferable thing, or is this just like something that the property owner is eligible for? I can't remember the details of that off the top of my head.
Yeah, defer to Hank, but I think it would be applicable just to the property itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, like,
So-
if it just carries over when the new owner buys it,
Yeah.
cause that would be an interesting,
I think so, because it's an exemption on the property,
right,
not specifically tied to the owner.
and I think Dave Merzig also, I think that was a question Dave Merzig had, is it something that is permanently attached to the building, or is it something that,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
those are fairly simple questions to ask.
So we should probably table this discussion until you get together with Hank.
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think it seems like a fine idea, and we'll go ahead. But let's take any time we need to get it better understood from other people's points of view.
Yeah, there's no rush, because we do have to have the historic commission actually set up and
Right.
operable. So
Yeah, this-
by the time that happens after the new year, we
Yeah.
can come back to this.
It doesn't work unless you have that review board actually approving work. So this isn't like a, yeah, we're not like,
So how would that, how would that work then? That anyone who's doing work on a house in the historic district will have
if
to
you're
go to the
in,
historic?
if you're in a local historic district where our architectural review board has any review process, which is Main Street and Walnut Street,
Mhm.
as part of a building permit to do an exterior improvement,
Mhm.
you could also, if, let's say you were like, I wanna repair a porch, I
Mhm.
wanna restore it to its original or historic, you would have to get a permit. That would require review from the architectural review board. In theory, you would be doing a great job, they would approve it, we would issue a building permit, and then at the end of that work, when we issue a CO, you could apply for this tax abatement. You would file a form, you'd submit it, you'd be granted the tax abatement because it would be work done, it was approved by the historic review board, issued a building permit, issued a CO, and that'd be it. That's the stipulation that's required for that tax abatement.
Yeah, the only additional step is that application to the city assessor,
Right.
the county assessor, to
Saying that,
to get the actual tax abatement.
right, saying that I did the work, it was approved by the board, it was approved through the code office, here's the CO. The CO would say that the work has been completed to the satisfaction of the city, and then that would be a form you file with the county assessor.
So by following the process that they have to follow
Anyway,
regardless,
Ordinarily, right.
they get essentially rewarded,
So-
they'll be rewarded just by putting in this application.
and then further, in theory, if that person was really maximizing the benefit of this, they could also file for state and federal SHPO, like tax credits. So you not only would be getting credits on your income tax, you would also be getting tax abatement from the city, just for following what we would consider a normal permitting and review process. So you're maximizing all your benefits of having a house in a historic district.
Just, and the trigger points for informing somebody about this opportunity is when they come to you.
Yeah, so what we would probably do is put it on our website, maybe put it on Facebook, we'd release a map showing the zones that would be applicable. I mean, part of it is just public education.
The building's been locked,
Ah,
and apparently my key didn't work, so the keys have been rekeyed apparently.
Oh,
Yes,
we have new
rekey-
keys?
we rekey.
I forgot about that.
There were a bunch of people out front, or out back. Apparently the mayor's having one of his committee
Was
meetings.
unlocked when I showed up.
The contractor came in and
Yeah, Van Dusen.
didn't want to be the one to leave it open, so he secured it.
So are there new keys?
You have your new key.
I do.
You're good.
I don't have my new
you
key.
don't get one.
We're still
There's a
working.
reason we changed the lock.
Okay,
let's continue.
Those are the two items on the agenda.
We moving on to exterior property maintenance code?
Yes,
John?
okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not where,
I made a table from this, follow up with him.
So this draft you have, again, so ignore the numbering on it. I've updated this, I sent it before the meeting, but it was too close to the meeting for you guys to get a copy. The numbering is irrelevant, just pretend like the 248-4, that's just a placeholder for the chapter. It has nothing to do with the actual ordinance. Greg, I went through and did those like edits. Again, not content edits, they were just like changing director of public works to whatever,
Public Works Director.
public works director. Yeah, there's no content changes, so we'll send you the newest draft, but we can still discuss the content of what is in front of you. You'll get the newest draft that's been numbered correctly and is exactly what the final draft would look like. The intent of this code is to basically take all of our like little smidgens of code that are spread out over 20 different chapters and consolidate into one code, like one chapter that we can reference. So currently, like, we have like a sidewalk snow removal chapter. And then in a separate chapter, we have an inoperable vehicle section. And then buried in brush and weed removal, we have something about garbage, and then in a different chapter, we have a separate chapter about garbage. And they each reference garbage removal, but they're in separate chapters, and they don't really, like if you wanted to know how you enforce the garbage removal, it's in a separate chapter from the chapter that says you can't dump garbage on your lawn. So the idea behind this is to kind of consolidate all of these sections into one chapter. So if you have a question about property maintenance in the city of Oneonta, you go to one chapter and you can see all of the property maintenance codes that we would be enforcing.
it's a wonderful idea, yeah, so it would be much more helpful to us to refer to print it.
Yeah. The other thing that this is doing, we funded an ordinance inspector. The way ordinance inspectors work is they enforce local ordinances, while the state code is not a local ordinance. So if we hire an ordinance inspector, they have to get all this training in order to do state code enforcement. The idea behind this document is by adopting some of this into local ordinance, we can then kind of use that ordinance inspector to enforce this law and not enforce the New York State law. So, if you can imagine this, I know it's weird, New York State has a code, and to enforce this code, to enforce the New York State part of it, you have to be certified through the Department of State. So if I write a ticket, I'm doing it on the authority of being a certified New York State code official. So I say, here's your ticket for violating the New York State code. If I write a code for Oneonta ordinances, it's a totally separate. I don't have to be certified by New York State to write a ticket as the city of Oneonta's code official. So in theory, if I wasn't certified through New York State, I could still enforce local ordinances as long as the city said that's okay. Our ordinance inspector that we're going to fill will be enforcing local ordinances. So to make it easier, we have a local ordinance here that says you can't have peeling paint. It mirrors the state code, but it's adopted as a local ordinance. So by doing that, we're adding a position that will require less certification. We can have that person certified. We can go through all that. However, in the meantime, they could be going out and enforcing local ordinances. We can also double ticket that way as well. So we could theoretically write an ordinance violation ticket for breaking a city ordinance, and then we could turn around and write a separate ticket or violation for violating a New York State code. So you're kind of like, I don't wanna say double dipping, but you're doubling your ability to enforce on the same violation. So that's kind of where we're at. basically this chapter would theoretically just kind of streamline processes we're already doing. It would make one chapter that you could find the violations, the remedies, the enforcement, how it works. And it also would kind of get rid of some of these other chapters that are just kind of floating around that have been, had stuff added to them, taken out of them, and just kind of, you know.
Stephen, do you have, are there things in here that are brand new?
So we changed the garbage can law. One of the issues we have is the garbage cans stored in view of the public right of way. That's always been a contentious code because technically you can view a garbage can from the public right of way on 3 sides of the house as you're walking down the sidewalk. So someone who's storing their garbage can, for example, at my house, I can put my garbage cans at the rear of the property, but as you walk by, you're gonna be able to see them from the sidewalk. Technically, that's a code violation. People storing their garbage cans on the sides of their house, in front of their garage, those are code violations. We would theoretically have to go through the city and we could write tickets for everyone who stores their garbage can.
Well, that's what this is, that's what my issue is with what I'm reading here. According to this, that would still happen. And, I mean, there's tons of houses in the community where they have no ability to put the garbage cans in the backyard. And putting it on the side yard is the only option, or under the carport. Like my house, my garbage cans are under the carport. I can't put them around the backside of the house, or even on the side yard. So, I think that's a little bit, I understand what we're trying to achieve, but I think we need to write it a different way, because I'm sure what we're trying to achieve is we don't want people putting their garbage cans out by the side of the road and just leaving them there.
Yeah, so basically, any property that's public street frontage on all yards shall store garbage containers at the rear of the property. So we're saying you just have to store them at the rear of the property.
Yeah, but what I just said is there's houses that don't have the ability to do that. Like, I can't get my garbage cans into my backyard with the space that I have along my carport. I mean, I should have the right to put, just like anybody else, to put my garbage cans under my carport.
Right.
How about like something within 25 feet of the public way?
Can you?
Yeah, something like that would be
Can you
more
look at that,
reasonable.
email I just sent, cause I might have actually changed this might have been a draft change.
Okay.
I did. 'Cause
Yeah, I think it's, like, if we haven't changed it, I think there's an easy way
No,
to change it.
I think I might have actually updated it, because
Okay.
I remember you sent this comment to me. It would be under.
I'm gonna read from the one you sent earlier.
Yeah.
So it's for under location, garbage and refuse shall be kept in such a place as to not constitute a nuisance. Receptacles, garbage, and bulk items should not be stored in front yards or on or along the front facade of a structure, building, or property.
Right, there you go. Okay, so I didn't change it. So essentially it says you can't store your garbage can in your front lawn, which is where we typically get complaints, people storing them in the front lawn.
I mean, it's better. I'm just trying to think of if I've seen any other instances in my ward where you don't have access to anywhere else but the front yard. And honestly, I don't know. Corner lots would have to be in the
In the rear.
rear of the building.
Or you theoretically a side lawn.
Yeah, because they've got 2 front lawns.
So you could store on the non-frontage side of either of those, the rear or the other side lawn. What we're attempting to do is come up with a way to figure out garbage can storage that moves them out of the front lawn, because that's what we get complaints about. People storing garbage cans 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in the front lawn or on the curb.
Right. Yeah.
So the compromise position was store them in the backyard or store them on a side yard, as long as they're not being stored directly in the front. Because that was the big,
Are we gonna run into any legal issues with telling people where they can put their garbage cans?
Probably not. It's a well, yeah, maybe. Maybe.
I know you can sue anybody for anything.
Right.
but-
I think it would be reasonable. consider to be unreasonable. Because it could be a health and safety thing as much as anything else. I mean, I would argue there was a health, if I were required to defend it, I'd say health and safety. But I was thinking something like, again, of course, everybody's proponent of their own thoughts, but if you could have what you had and then just say, in no case shall it be closer than 25 feet from the public highway or something like that, or from the sidewalk, then you'd have both protections. It would not be sitting in the beside the street. But if they don't, it isn't.
Yeah, we'd still have instances of some houses that
Well, my only
could be
concern
sitting in the
with,
front yard.
my concern with the 25 feet might be that then I have to go out with a tape measure and figure out how far.
Was that too?
I
And
was, I was just trying to avoid any like just, you could say, I mean, is it in the front yard? No. Can it be at the front corner of the house? Sure, as long as it's not.
Then, again, these things are amendable. Try it until it doesn't work anymore, and then say we did our best to do as much as we could, and nip and tuck it a different way.
'cause that would even allow, like, I'm picturing houses on Irving Place, for example, that have houses here, but then the garage is set back in the driveway. It would even allow them to put the garbage cans in front of the driveway, or the garage in the back.
Yeah,
And
as long as it's
be
not in the
fine.
front yard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be okay with that.
what we're trying to eliminate is people with 7 garbage cans, storing
Stack 'em.
7 garbage cans stacked across the front of the house.
Right.
That,
Or a dumpster.
or basically they are a dumpster at that point. You've got
Yeah.
7, 50-gallon or whatever cans
Yeah.
overflowing with garbage stored in the front lawn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Animals get into it. In addition to that, there's sections in here that include, you can't store garbage loose in just bags. Those are not considered garbage cans. You have to store them in cans with tightly fitted lids.
We don't have that rule at the moment at all.
No. So what we're getting is, and what you see, and I've got pictures of it if you'd ever like to see it, people put out 2 garbage cans and then they put out 40 loose plastic bags on the whatever you call it, the tree lawn.
You just described every May.
Yeah.
Right,
With a mattress.
yeah.
On top.
So what we end up with, there's particularly a house on East Street that I walk by on my way to work that is flooded with garbage, basically every garbage pickup day, because they have 2 cans and 48 bags of garbage. So sometimes those bags of garbage get piled 4 feet, 5 feet high.
It was a place on Pine Street like that also.
Yes. So those become problematic because even if it's on garbage day, technically the garbage will be picked up.
Right.
It's just being stored incorrectly. So it's not one of those instances where we can necessarily remedy the situation because it's going to be remedied. The garbage truck is going to come pick it up. The problem is how it's being stored.
In the
Squirrels,
meantime.
raccoons tear into it, dogs, cats.
Yep.
And even if the garbage then is picked up, it still leaves scattered garbage throughout. So it's very, I would say, pretty problematic, pretty disgusting. So that's added. Let me see what else is. We added a section about composting. Right now, we've had complaints about people composting. So we added a section that basically says,
What section was that in? Approximately on this version?
would be section A. So section A of 248, it's Holder Place 3, section 9.
What's the title that it's under?
Use and maintenance of receptacles, storage of bulk, garbage, and refuse items. So basically, we say like composting materials, which we define in the chapter, are not considered garbage as long as they're maintained in a sanitary, clean, not in the front yard. Basically, they follow all the rules as garbage.
What about the porches, roof areas, and exteriors? No furniture, access, or occupancy shall be permitted on any roof. Is that new?
Yes. So what we previously, there's been no, it's not a code violation to sit on a roof. I mean, that's essentially, the state code doesn't say you can write up a code violation for sitting on roofs. This would just clearly define if the roof wasn't built to be a habitable space, if it wasn't built to be a deck, if it wasn't built to be a place that people can access, then it is not.
How would that, I'm in agreement with it. The difficulty I'm gonna have is how we're gonna enforce it, because typically when that happens, it's on the weekends.
Yeah, if someone calls the cops go
The
out,
police.
they send us a picture of it, they call me, we write them a ticket, or we send a violation.
Yeah, currently on, is it Cedar Street? Cedar Street. There's a rental house that has a rocking horse on the porch.
Yep, on the corner.
I'm waiting for it to be blown off.
Yeah, so we added that section, so in theory, we can kind of start looking at that. In addition, there's areas in here about, essentially removing your lawn and replacing with gravel. Currently, you can do that, there's no code violation associated with tearing your entire lawn off and just dumping a truckload of gravel there. There's currently nothing in our code that says if I decide to tear the entire median in front of my house out and replace it with gravel, I can just do that, there's no penalty for that.
Gregory Plumbing did that.
Lots of people have started doing that. And
They
it's-
got a citation for not cutting it down so many years ago. They just tore it all out.
That was our solution.
Put asphalt on.
Yeah, so that's been in,
Would that stop somebody from tearing out the median and building a flower bed for rose bushes?
well, so what it says,
It's really a public. That's really a public way. So.
the planting of annuals and perennials in the tree lawn should be allowed, but the planting of trees or shrubs in these areas will not be permitted without the approval of the public works director. So essentially what it says is if you wanna plant flowers there, you can go ahead and do it, but if you're gonna plant shrubs, trees, if you're gonna do landscaping there, it's gonna have to be approved by the city. And it also says you can't just tear it out and dump gravel, it's gotta be maintained, you can't park on it. And then let me get here. And that includes also lawns, by the way. So if you wanna tear your whole lawn out because you don't wanna mow, you just can't do that anymore. Tree lawns, the property owner should be responsible for and shall repair the specifications of the public work director. Any damage to sidewalks, curbing, or vegetation result in personal, lessee, tenant, or occupant use. So if you have occupants, another great thing we see, widening the driveway access. A lot of people just drive over the curbing. So if you walk down Elm Street, you can see entire sections of the median that have essentially just turned into giant mud pits and the curbing's all destroyed because people drive over the
Yeah.
median to park. So what this code would say is, if you do that, if your tenants do that, you will repair it. Or
So
you
we're
can-
not gonna be trying to ticket, in a case like that, we're not gonna try and ticket car owners, we're ticketing property owners.
We would say the property owner, if your tenant or lessee or occupant decided to drive over the median and turn it into a giant mud hole and destroy the curbing, we're gonna send you a bill to replace it.
Good.
Or you can apply to widen your driveway access, which we currently have a process and review system for through DPW. So ideally what this would do is clean up some of our curbing issues that we're seeing where we have people just driving. And if you, like I said, if you need to see it, look at the intersection of Center and Elm. If you walk up on the left side of Elm Street, it's just a giant mud pit.
Would this theoretically help with the front yard parking issue where, rather than having to catch the car, like you're saying, Dave, and ticket the vehicle, if it's turned into a mud pit, that's essentially the same as replacing your grass with gravel,
Yep.
so you need a ticket for that.
Yeah. And also what we've started doing with that is we have a way now to get license plates, so we can track down who's parking the cars. So we've started tracking down who's parking by whose license plate is associated with a parked car.
Excuse me, Stephen, did you send out the new copy to us today?
I sent it to Carrie and Greg, but they can
Okay.
forward it.
I'll forward it right now.
Okay.
Also, let me see, we included a section here about indoor furniture being used outside. It could be problematic, but so far it has not been problematic.
What was the furniture, what did you say?
Indoor furniture, like upholstered furniture being used outside.
Okay.
A lot of cities have adopted a similar ordinance. It's one of those like, anyone can sue us, if they wanna sue us over that, I guess they can.
Did I see that? I don't think I've seen that one.
The indoor,
Yeah.
the use, keeping, or storage of any upholstered furniture, including
What's the number?
mattresses. It's under porches, roof areas, and exteriors. So,
Got it.
Actually, it's the second section after.
so basically what it says is you can't store solid waste, which is like tires, just random stuff. Our code defines solid waste as random stuff. So you can't store random stuff in upholstered furniture. We also included a section about, driveways, parking spaces, steps, walking areas being paved and maintained, cause right now we have no, like, if you don't wanna maintain your driveway, or you don't wanna maintain your parking area, there's no code about that, I mean, you can have potholes that are 2 feet deep.
This applies to rental properties, or to all residences?
I mean, so technically it would apply to all residences, but we aren't typically visiting every parking space in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of just a general property maintenance inspection, which is what we would typically be doing at businesses, rentals. I mean, if you have a secret pothole in your backyard parking area that we don't know about, we're probably not gonna like use a drone to find it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a neighbor who's cranky at another neighbor and says, my neighbor has a cracked driveway, cracked concrete driveway, and I want you to go and cite him. That might be problematic.
So I would say like this, it says afford safe passage under normal use and weather conditions. So a cracked driveway probably would still afford safe passage under normal conditions. I mean, I think it's one of those like, you know, the property maintenance code says that dwelling units shall be maintained in a sanitary manner. Well, whose
What the
idea of
hell's that?
sanitary is it? I mean, if you get 10 people in here, you can probably find 10 different definitions of sanitary. Yeah, so H is like is literally a copy of the state code. Exterior property and premises shall be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition. So, the state code has that language in it. Is that arbitrary? I mean, potentially yes, because everyone's gonna have a different definition of what is clean, safe, and sanitary. So,
We have structures and exterior property shall be kept free from rodent and stray cat harborage and infestation.
I don't touch cats.
I'm only half joking because we have properties that have gaping holes under their porches where you have cats just
Yeah.
accumulating.
Yes. I do not know the best solution for cat removal.
You haven't lived until you've tried to pass cat legislation.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
I, just don't, if you do, just don't say I didn't tell you. I still have the scars from years
I'm at
ago.
the point now where,
What are you gonna do?
bring
say
it.
So, also included in this, it's our same snow and ice removal that we've always had, it's our same mowing. The only change is, we would be sending one notification letter at the beginning of each year about grass, about snow, about garbage. With the exception of a change in ownership or a change in local agent. Cause what we're doing currently is we're sending a notice of violation every time. So every time someone doesn't mow their lawn, we send them a letter that says, can you please mow your lawn in 7 days? And then they do it, and then they don't mow for 2 weeks, and then we send them another letter that says, can you please mow your lawn? Those are all sent certified, so they're all sent at $6 a piece or whatever the certified mailing cost is. So in an effort to offset some of the costs of sending these certified letters and also to offset us being property managers for fill-in property owner's name, we would send one notice that says, this is the code, we would send it certified, saying you have 7 days to correct, you will not receive future notifications related to mowing your lawn. This is another slightly tricky section of ordinance, but a lot of other municipalities are doing the exact same thing.
I've defended those successfully.
Oh, well, there you go.
I have no
So-
problem with that.
We have other municipalities that are essentially doing that. We were already doing that with snow removal, so we didn't send notification about snow removal.
Snow removal is easier because it's an immediate
Oh.
health and safety
Right.
issue. Nobody got killed by
Right,
18-inch grass.
right. We don't do it with garbage, but
That's
obviously
fine.
that's a
Encouraged.
sanitation thing. So this would just add lawns to the list of things that we're not sending 400 mailings. Because we have some properties that will send 8 lawn letters a summer to. Basically, they wait for us to send them a notice,
Yeah.
mow their lawn, they're never actually in violation, they're never actually being remedied, they're just having us act as a lawn service for them. Which, like literally, we'll get an email like, thanks for letting me know. So we're gonna get out of that business, the certified letter mailing business.
Can I go back to this
Yes.
other one? Structures and exterior property.
Yes.
I'm reading this whole thing and then I'm starting thinking it's not just cats, but it's possums and
Bats.
well, there's bats, but no, possums and skunks, and I mean they're not considered rodents, but that's still an issue in certain parts of the city.
No, I think they have.
They're actually wild animals that are controlled by DEC.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, but we can't do anything about it. I mean,
No,
talk to Peter Friedman. I mean, seems like over the summer, every couple weeks, he's called by somebody to remove a skunk in under their porch or because it's,
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously we're always gonna have that runaround. I mean, the idea is that they correct it and they make it less likely for said rodent to get in. I'm not gonna go out and, shoot squirrels or shoot
right.
porcupines during the day.
good plan because then they have to defend you for criminal activity. You can't do that.
I know. So yeah, I mean, road and harborage is technically, it's a New York State code violation, it's an ordinance violation now.
Okay.
That is another section that's basically just copied out of the state code.
Okay.
So, in theory, we could write a ticket, we could require them to secure their property better, I mean, that's the long-term goal.
Okay, but adding anything else, any other pest in that area is not appropriate, is what
So
you think?
New York's so New York State's property maintenance code defines rodents as porcupines, mammals, gnawing mammals is what they, so it includes squirrels and possum, any gnawing, I mean, I can give you the list,
Skunks,
I'm sure. Let's see.
raccoons, skunks.
Gnawing mammal of an order that includes rats, mice, squirrels, hamsters, porcupines, and relatives, distinguished by strong, constantly growing incisors and no canine teeth. So,
I don't think that's skunks.
I mean, I'm sure we can get some sort of opinion on that.
The
but-
skunks are, it's the claws.
Is a skunk a rodent?
No.
Here's what I found from Wikipedia. Skunks are mammals of the family Ophididae.
That is my question.
Yeah, I mean,
They're related to polecats.
Well, they eat the same food.
I mean, we could always refer to it as, I don't know, rodents and, or wild animal harborage, like, typically when we find places where skunks have gotten in, we've sent people letters and gone back to make sure they put in a replacement piece of lattice or chicken wire or some sort of lock.
I'm also thinking of just, you know, you've got a rental property next to you or some property next to you and they're not maintaining the property well and there's a shed in the back that skunks are getting in. It's like, you wanna be able to give those people some recourse to get that dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, most of this comes down to improperly stored garbage. That's where a lot of this rodent stuff gets in. Squirrels, or not squirrels, skunks, those things are like getting into garbage.
So what if you do nuisance animals as defined by DEC, which is what we did with
Yeah, yeah.
feeding the
That's
animals?
what I'm saying,
Instead
like
of
some sort of-
rodents.
Well, we'd wanna include rodents as well.
A lot of the rodents are included though.
Okay. So yeah, we can do that. We can just expand it to nuisance animals as defined by DEC.
And it's not all just garbage though, just so you know, cause you have people that like to put out food for the wild cats, which bring in other rodents, other nuisance animals. So, okay.
I don't think that would qualify as trash, if it's just a pile of food outdoors where,
I mean, Greg, it's a clean, sanitary. I mean, I think you could argue that it's unsanitary, which,
I can attest to the smell that it ultimately brings.
yeah. So I think I think you can work around the definition of what types of animals in some cases by saying it's an unsanitary condition. So we had a house where people were letting dogs, just accumulate feces on the property. And we didn't go after them because of the dogs, we went after them because it was an unsanitary condition.
On the outside of the property.
Yeah. The problem you run into on some of that though is like, for example, if someone lets their dog, you know, defecate your lawn every day, well, it's technically your property, then it's unsanitary. So it turns into like, it can be difficult to enforce codes like that because ultimately the person whose lawn is getting defecated on is the violator of the unsanitary ordinance, not the dog who walks down to their own house and sleeps.
Right.
So that's when you get into the problem of like having to either catch the person doing it or, cause a lot of the property maintenance code is focused on the property in question, not the circumstances around it. And that's where it gets kind of difficult to enforce stuff related to animals because it becomes, you know. Or if someone like drives by your house and dumps 4 bags of garbage in your lawn, ultimately I would come to you and say you have to clean that up, not we need to find the guy that did this. And that's just the truth of how these things work, you know, it's kind of the mechanism. The mechanism is focused on the property owner and the property in question, not the circumstantial violator.
Okay, so do we need to bring this back to this committee when it's all done? Are you looking for a vote?
Well, so what I did was,
Okay.
there should be a fairly clean version that we can add the animal thing to.
Okay.
I can update that and send it out again, for the full council to just, cause at that point I would have no other real tweaks.
John, how do you feel about having the final version of this just passed, put forward to the full council to discuss?
I'm fine with it. I mean, it's,
Okay. I mean, to bring it back here, I feel like we've had a big discussion, and to bring it a
Yeah,
final
I think
written
we-
version back here just seems kind of like, do we need to do that?
I mean, so at this point, I would add the DEC animal thing. I would clarify the difference there.
Yeah.
there's, it could be, depending on the schedule of the meetings and when something would be ready. So, for example, we meet twice, once. What do you think?
I think it should just go to the council. I don't think we need to bring it back here.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
Stephen, thank you.
John, I don't have anything else
I am
for the
either.
meeting.
And, that being the case, is there anyone here who
Wants to bring something else up?
will forever hold their peace?
Can I ask a question? Why is it so tough to address cats?
Because they have incredibly strong constituency both on the local and the state level. So there is no state regulation of cats of any kind. Also, they just have a ask Gofar. I mean, they have an incredibly serious and dedicated constituency who will determine any limitation of any kind on any cat interaction or any interface with the government to be the equivalent of Nazism.
What I find amusing is we talk about the deer population, and the reason why sterilization doesn't work with a deer population is because we don't have a contained area where they live. You always have more coming in, and then when we talk about the cat population, it's like, oh, gotta sterilize them and then you can release them. It's like
Catch and release is
it doesn't work.
the answer to every issue about cats.
But it doesn't work, obviously. And I'm not
You
saying
have me
I'm not
convinced.
saying what to do about cats, but I'm saying that it cannot be the end all be all answer for dealing with the cat population, because it obviously doesn't work anywhere in the world. I mean, in the end, I mean, maybe short term, but because how many did we sterilize? Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Something,
Hundreds.
and
Go
well,
back to where we were.
and it actually had an impact on at least it did then, on the pack that was on the
Cats come in packs.
whatever they are.
Yeah.
There was a
Oh,
cat
yeah.
pack that was
100%.
there was by the there was off Fairview that was in the rail yards.
Yeah.
They were literally, and they had feeding stations, and there were maybe 100. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, feeding stations just.
Oh yeah, and there was a woman who had
Back in
literally had a feeding station, and we sued her and got sued back, and she had a structure in the back that had holes in it. Walk up, it's kind of like a chicken coop except really big, and she kept it full of cat food, and it became a horrific
I mean,
healthcare issue.
Can we at least legislate that you can't keep food outside your house for cats? Or
Well, so
or
how we
other animals?
addressed that with one particular situation that involved cats was the property owner had pictures of skunks eating the cat food,
Yeah.
and we went after them for feeding
Wild
wild
animals.
animals.
Okay.
But what you have now is I can think of one person that has food outside, turned in a container, turned in a way that you can't see that there's food there, and the cats can come up behind it, eat, and then leave, or whatever other animals, but you can't prove that there's food in this big, huge composter container that is not
At
holding
some point, you have
compost.
probable cause, I could get a warrant, but that, but
Drones
that's,
on the agenda in the next meeting.
again, good,
Well, I mean-
good luck with that.
And then,
And I love you all gentlemen, but I have a drink waiting for me.
Drink that water.
Thank you, I will. Keith, can I get a?
Alright,
I just
we all
wanna
done,
see-
John?
I just wanna see the police raid with a batter down whatever obstacle there is.
Oh, I see the, are we off?
We're done.
Oh,
Yeah, we need to adjourn,